Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go. Let's go. We're going to talk in this video about the Democratic Republicans, about the party of Jefferson. Already noticing that there's some skipping going on in the video. I hope that doesn't persist, but we'll see how long this goes. Okay, so we're on page 4 of the study guide, ladies and gentlemen, talking about the landmark case of Marbury versus Madison. Now, this happens during Jefferson's presidency, so that's why it's here. But here's the deal. Marbury versus Madison is the first significant Supreme Court case. In it, Supreme Court Chief Justice John Marshall asserts the right of the court to judicial review. Now, Marshall, you'll remember, is a Federalist appointed by President John Adams before he left office. And this is a strong Federalist ruling. It shows the strength of the central government. And it does that by saying that all laws passed within the nation will have their final decision made as to whether or not they're constitutional by the body of the Supreme Court. In the case of Marbury versus Madison, the court for the first time overruled a portion of a national law, and in doing so began the process of judicial review. On to the Democratic Republicans. Now remember, our man Jefferson wins in 1800. Close election. Okay, John Adams, the incumbent president, had been highly unpopular as a result of the XYZ affair and the Alien and Sedition Acts. There was talk of nullification. It was a mess. The campaign was muddy and ugly, and at the end of it, Jefferson stood tall. This is the first win for the Democratic Republicans, and they're going to rack up a lot of them. The Jeffersonian dynasty here will include 8 Jefferson years, 8 Madison years, and 8 Monroe years before it's all said and done. 24 years of leadership by the Democratic Republicans, all of them from the state of Virginia. Big run. Looking at the questions here, the Democratic Republican Party's view on the growing size of government. There's too much of it. We need to cut it. So Jefferson will begin the process of eliminating federal employees, collecting less taxes, lowering the national debt. Remember, it's Jefferson's arch nemesis, Alexander Hamilton, who had claimed that we needed a permanent national debt. But Jefferson is going to begin the process of whittling that debt down in order to assure that the federal government was not large. There's no need for that kind of government on a national scale, Jefferson would say. The settlement of the West. One of the things closest to Jefferson's heart is the right of individuals to move west and open farms. So the Democratic Republicans are going to begin the process and continuing through all of that dynasty of lowering the price of land and also lowering the amount of land you had to buy. So for instance, in 1785, when the Northwest Ordinances are passed, if you wanted to buy a farm in the West, you had to buy 640 acres of land at $1 an acre. That's $640 cash on the barrel. It's a lot of money. In 1796, when Adams was president, it was twice that, $1,280 for the land. Steep. By the time of 1820, when James Monroe is president, you can buy an 80-acre farm for $1.25 an acre. That's $100. That's doable. That means you can move west, buy some land, open a farm, take out a loan, become part of the American dream, and Jefferson loves it. A string of farmers. Now, if I'm a Federalist, I'm saying, okay, Jefferson, you're lowering the price of land so that people buy those farms, they move out west, and they're loyal to your party. What you're really doing is feathering the nest of the Democratic Republicans for the next generation to come. And Jefferson's response would be, yeah, guilty. Guilty. Yeah, that's well played. Okay. Shouldn't we do that? What would you raise the price of land? Okay. The Louisiana Purchase. One of the ways we can continue the movement of the West is to buy Louisiana. A hell of a bargain at $15 million. We were going to buy just New Orleans for $10 million. Napoleon offered us the entire thing for $15 million. Now, if you're Jefferson, you're a strict constructionist. You're not supposed to be doing stuff like this. And in 1791, when the issue on the national agenda was the national bank, you told Alexander Hamilton that the elastic power didn't exist in the government to do these sorts of things, and yet here you are doing them yourselves. Or yourself, I beg your pardon. Seems out of character, Mr. Jefferson, but again, the deal's too good, and so Jefferson does buy Louisiana. But we should remember that for a strict constructionist, that's a moment of loose constructionist thinking. Let's talk about the War of 1812. Americans reference the War of 1812 as the Second War for Independence. We won the first one. Clear, done, finished, and the English never quite went away on 2 fronts. Let's start in the east. On the high seas, the English were impressing. In other words, they were stealing American sailors off of ships. This happened in the 1780s, the 90s, and the zeros, whatever you want to call it. And America couldn't get the English to stop doing it. We tried to address the issue with Jay's Treaty, and the English simply wouldn't stop. Now, we also have On the Western Front, Americans who are under attack by Native Americans who are armed, supported by the English from their forts and their posts in Canada. So on both the eastern and western fronts of the United States, the English continue to violate the sovereignty and the neutrality of the United States. Now, if I'm a war hawk, I'm someone who says, doggone it, it's time we put a stop to it. Let's show these limeys the way it's going to be. Let's go to war, Mr. President. Let's go to war. If I'm Jefferson, on the other hand, I'm thinking, war, taxes, army, big government. I don't like it. I don't like it. Jefferson wants to avoid it, so he passes what's called the Embargo Act of 1807, which bans any shipping across the Atlantic. In a sense, it kind of makes sense. Let's avoid being on the high seas and being harassed by never being on the high seas. Well played, sir. But if you're a Federalist from New England, you believe that the president is again using his power as a president to limit your trade. You're the one who makes the living off of the ocean. You're the one whose livelihood is going to be most affected by the Embargo Act of 1807. It is a horrible, horrible thing that is happening to you. Trade plummets 80% a year. Even Jefferson has to admit that this wasn't the right way to handle things. In 1808, the Embargo Act is lifted. Jefferson leaves the presidency and leaves the matter into the lap of his Secretary of State, James Madison. Now, Madison is going to take the nation to war eventually, trying to end the problems with the English. And the big event that we remember from it is an event called the Hartford Convention. In 1814, the Federalists, now having lost the national election in 04, 08, 12, and soon to be in 16, sit down to say, how do we get back in the picture? We are not a national political party anymore. We can't win. We frankly can sit here and say, we believe in X, Y, and Z, but we can't win. Did you get that joke? We believe in X, Y, and Z because that was in a Federalist presidency. It's funny when I told it. It's funny when I told it. Everyone here in the room laughed. The chairs are jumping for joy. Yeah, I lost my train of thought there. But if I'm a Federalist, I think that I have to find some way of changing the rules. So at Hartford in 1814, what they did was they said, okay, let's change the rules a little. What if the presidents have to come from different states? Huh? You can't all be from Virginia. And what if the presidents only served one term? That's a good one. What if we made it harder for western states and southern states to get into the Union? Because those states are always Democratic Republicans. Good idea. And all of those things are kind of whatever-ish. And then someone says the dirty word secession, and ooh, it is on like Donkey Kong. The suggestion that the Federalists might bail on the country in the midst of a war labels them as unpatriotic. Their place in the national political scheme was already diminished. The fact that they just did what they did right there, ooh, even worse. Okay, flipping the page 5 here, ladies and gentlemen. The Missouri Compromise and then the Monroe Doctrine, and we're out. The Missouri Compromise is an 1820 agreement between the North and the South, really, that allows the slavery issue to be tucked away for at least a generation or so. In order to admit Missouri, a slave state, into the Union, Maine, a free state, is admitted at the same time, thus preserving the balance of free to slave states in the Senate and within the United States. We also allow that any state that comes out of the Louisiana Purchase and is south of the 36-degree 30-minute line, that is to say the bottom border of Missouri, those areas would be slave. Anything north of that would be free. So at that point, we can look at the entire United States map and say, okay, not all of it is settled, but we know where the free states will be, where the slave states will be. Let's go. Now, what about the Oregon Territory? We claim it, but it's not really ours yet. What about Mexico? That's not ours either, so that's another issue. What we're going to find is that slavery and expansion go hand in hand. You start talking about one, and you're talking about the other at the same time. Monroe Doctrine. In 1823, President Monroe gives a speech in which he states that Latin American countries that are newly independent from Spain should not be seen as opportunities for European empire. We, the United States, feel a sense of possessiveness, if you will, over the Western Hemisphere. We're going to watch over this hemisphere. We're going to make sure that people don't get too involved here, people being the English and the French. We're not saying that these are our territories, but we are saying it's our neighborhood. We'll stay out of yours, as Washington encourages us to do. You stay out of ours. Last video we'll talk about will be with Andrew Jackson. Take care, folks.